Marshall D. Teach has been terrorizing his way through the Grand Line since he first began his journey to becoming Luffy's #1 threat to the Pirate King's throne. Betrayals, mysteries, and genius planning, the Rise of Blackbeard might be the most interesting origins in One Piece, but also the hardest to fully decrypt. Don't worry though, because if you make it to the end of this deep dive, I promise you will have a PhD in Blackbeardology. This is a complete analysis of how Blackbeard's past and future victims set him up to go down as the greatest villain in fiction history. To fully understand Blackbeard's genius and ruthlessness, we have to start 28 years before the current events of One Piece. When Marshall D. Teach was just 12 years old, he crossed paths with the Whitebeard pirates. Based on his appearance during these flashbacks and drawings of him as a kid auto-released, we know that he was either very poor and or in a messed up situation. He would beg Whitebeard to let him join his crew. Newgate was reluctant, but he would cave and allow Teach to apprentice under him. Whitebeard was just a really good guy. His dream was all about having a big family, but he had no idea how much this one decision would change the fate of the entire One Piece world and be particularly destructive to the same family he worked so hard to build. You see, we learn in chapter 440 that the first step to Teach's world takeover was he needed to acquire a very specific devil fruit, the Yami Yami no Mi, or darkness devil fruit, and Teach felt that him being on Whitebeard's ship was his best shot at finding it, since they was a top 2 crew at the time and they could traverse the entire world, which is not an easy thing to do in One Piece. All of this means that even at this young age, Teach had already began plotting his schemes. Being a part of such a high profile crew also meant that Teach no doubt was involved in countless battles as a kid that we don't get to see, but we do know that 2 years after he joined, he was a part of the legendary Whitebeard pirates versus the Roger pirates battle that lasted 3 days and 3 nights. During this flashback, thanks to Buggy telling Shanks things he heard about Teach, we learned that even back then, there was already rumors and mysteries surrounding him. Like Teach's body was just strange, and that he had never been seen sleeping, with Buggy even calling him a monster. We don't know exactly who Teach went up against during this battle, but we do get to see his weapon of choice. This 3-bladed weapon thing that looks like something that Shredder would use. This is actually important because in chapter 434, we learned that around 14 years after the 3-Day War, or 12ish years before the current story, for an unknown reason, Teach and Shanks face off, in which it would likely be the same weapon that left Shanks with a nasty permanent scar over his left eye. And scars are a pretty big deal in One Piece. So yes, even the almighty Shanks has been victimized by Blackbeard in a way that Shanks himself can't seem to forget, but we will get back to that later. During the years that Teach spent as a member of the Whitebeard pirates, he just kind of chills, hiding his true ambitions from the rest of the crew, pretending he is content with living a mediocre existence. He is able to keep up this charade for over 2 decades, eventually joining the 2nd Division of the Whitebeard Pirates after they break off into a fleet. A few years after this, Portraits the Ace joins the crew and is placed in the same division. He quickly impresses everyone with his power and fearlessness. Ace accomplishes so much so fast, they offer him the empty spot of the 2nd Division commander. Being the thoughtful guy Ace is, he asked Teach if he is cool with that. Since Teach was a part of the original crew, Ace thought he might want or feel he deserves his position more, but Teach says no, that he has no ambitions for that sort of thing, and he even motivates Ace to take it. A few years pass with everyone going on adventures and bonding, and then it happens. While out on a mission, one of Teach's friends and superior 4th Division Commander Thatch discovered a devil fruit, and when Teach laid his eyes on it, he was flabbergasted and then sinisterly excited. This was the exact devil fruit Teach had joined the Whitebeard Pirates to find. He knew this because Teach had spent decades studying the devil fruit encyclopedia, but he had a problem. The Whitebeard Pirates had a rule regarding devil fruits. The person who finds the devil fruit gets to be the one to eat it, so Teach had no choice. He had to respect the rules and find a different fruit. Just joking, he literally stabbed his fellow crewman in the back, killing him, and then he would steal the fruit and flee the Moby Dick in the middle of the night. This was one of the most cold-blooded examples of a person becoming a victim since I started this character analysis series. There is just so many layers of betrayal here. I would like to point out that I don't agree with Teach here, but I do somewhat understand if you're thinking in terms of his belief system. He had spent 26 years years waiting on this exact moment, and he is a person who feels nothing happens by accident, that you have to seize opportunities. The concept of fate is a crucial part of Teach's ideology. He probably felt like that fate wanted it to go down like this. And knowing what we know now about Devil Fruit wheels, he might have been right. And this whole situation was some sort of test or prerequisite for the Darkness Devil Fruit. But yeah, at this moment, Teach was gone and Blackbeard was born. Ace decided he had to be the one to go after him since he was his commander. He felt like it was his responsibility. Whitebeard did give some pushback, saying they should let it go just this one time because he had a bad feeling about this, but he would ultimately allow it. Now this basically catches us up to the current storyline, and this is where things really start to get interesting. After Blackbeard's betrayal and escape from the Whitebeard pirates, he formed his own pirate crew called the Blackbeard Pirates. We don't know if Blackbeard knew these people before his betrayal or he met them after, but either way, they were not just random drafts. They were hand-picked elite members. In fact, they will expose a lot about who Blackbeard truly is in the near future. These original members were Doc Q, Lafayette, Jesus Burgess, Van Augur, and Stronger. Pretty much immediately after the crew was formed, they attacked Drum Island. This is what led to Wapo originally fleeing the kingdom before he returned, and then the events of Drum Island arc took place. The true reason behind this invasion is currently unknown, but knowing Blackbeard, he wouldn't have done anything like this without it fitting into his overall plan. Where Blackbeard becomes especially relevant to the story as we see it through the Straw Hat's eyes is during the Jaya arc. This is where Luffy and Blackbeard first met, but neither of them knew how closely their fates were intertwined. The Straw Hats arrived at the port of a place called Mocktown and pretty much immediately encounter a member of the Blackbeard's crew. The first is Doc Q. If you don't count Lafayette shooting down birds onto their ship so far away the Straw Hats couldn't even see the island that he was shooting from. But yeah, so Doc Q is near the port, tricking people into eating apples that may or may not explode. And of course, Luffy eats a few. Then there is an explosion nearby. A Mocktown resident explains that people have been getting killed after eating the apples from the weird guy. The Straw Hats rightfully freak out, but Luffy doesn't go boom. And then Doc Q explains that they shouldn't worry because Luffy picked a dud apple. Otherwise, he would have died after the first bite. He says Luffy must be a lucky man, which makes me wonder how many victims weren't so lucky. Jesus Burgess is also there King Konging around looking for more opponents. Another Mocktown resident literally asks, how many victims is that now? This is why it's so hard to actually count the Blackbeard Pirates victims, because they are just so many and most of them happen off screen. It's likely the number is in the hundreds if not thousands. Hurting people and taking lives is how they spend their free time. So in a place like Mocktown, where there is basically no consequences for such things, the Blackbeard Pirates are having a violence filled day, but nobody really knows who they are yet. The Straw Hats try and fail to get a hotel, so they head over to the local tavern to gather information. This is where Blackbeard and Luffy first cross paths. Nami and the barkeep are discussing the problematic town, and we get a shot of Luffy and Blackbeard sitting next to each other. It's immediately obvious that Oda is making some kind of parallels, or maybe it's more like perpendiculars between the two, if that's even a word. Basically, they are two sides of the same coin. They both burp and then yell at the barkeep to give them more pie. Blackbeard thinks the pie is amazing. Luffy thinks it's terrible. They both chug their drinks, in which Luffy thinks it's really good, but Blackbeard thinks it's really bad. This causes the two pirate captains to think the other is mocking them, so they exchange insults and request separate to-go foods. Luffy asks for 50 packs of meats, so Teach asks for 51 pies. Teach raises his, so Luffy raises his, and so on and so on. Blackbeard asks Luffy if he is a pirate and what his bounty is. Luffy responds saying yeah and 30 million, which took Teach by surprise, calling Luffy a liar. As Blackbeard is leaving the bar, this is when Bellamy the hyena enters the bar, and then we have that whole situation. I already covered it in depth in my Victims of Monkey D. Luffy video, so check that one out if you want a deep dive of this moment. But basically, Bellamy starts harassing Luffy, and Nami knows things are about to get chaotic, and since they are really just there to gather information on Skypiea, she quickly asks the barkeep about the legendary city. This results in the entire bar busting out laughing at the question, including Bellamy, who claims the Straw Hats are fools for believing in ancient legends and dreams, and that, quote, the age of pirate pipe dreams is over. and that people believing in such things like El Dorado, the Emerald City, and the One Piece are just fools to get themselves killed. Luffy and Zoro don't fight back. One, because Luffy had promised Nami he wouldn't fight in this town when they first arrived, and two, because this whole scene was an allegory for when Shanks didn't fight back against the mountain bandits back in Makuno's bar, so that it didn't get destroyed. This leads to Luffy and Zoro getting roughed up pretty bad and laughed at for being dreamers. As they are leaving the bar, Blackbeard is sitting outside. He is laughing, eating pie, and asks Nami why is she upset, because it was in fact her friends that just won that fight. Though this confuses Nami, Blackbeard continues to compliment her for her comebacks. Blackbeard then delivers one of his most iconic lines, quote, "The new age they speak of is rubbish. The age of pirate dreams is over, zahaha. People's dreams don't ever end, or a man's dreams will never die, depending on the translation you've seen." He goes on to proclaim, "Let them laugh. If you're aiming for the top, you don't always need your fist to show your might." Luffy and Zoro look kinda stunned, like something is off, and they begin to walk away. Blackbeard's last words directed at them is, "I hope you make it to Sky Island." As the two pirates joined by fate walk separate ways, the iconic they moment happens. Nami tells Luffy that maybe that guy knows something about how to get to Skypiea, but Luffy tells her that's not just one guy. She asks what he means, and Zoro replies, "There's more than one." Now, I have seen about 20 different translations of how this conversation went down. The one I just referred to is the official Viz translation, but the anime used the iconic they verbiage. It doesn't really matter which one is more accurate though, because one thing is for sure, Luffy and Zoro could tell something crazy was up with Blackbeard that was different from whenever they just seen him minutes earlier. This is why I feel that Blackbeard's unknown power can come and go, because they didn't feel that they aura earlier. Overall, Blackbeard and Luffy's first encounter was rather chill. I would even say that Blackbeard liked Luffy's energy, but that all changes in just a few chapters. By the way, it's also important to know at some point previously, the world government held a meeting to discuss who should replace Crocodile as one of the 7 warlords after he fell to Luffy. This is where we get to see Luffy of the Blackbeard Pirates make his first visual appearance. He appears at Mera's Joie to recommend that Blackbeard be the one to replace Crocodile, but they would decline because they felt that Blackbeard didn't have enough clout yet, and so the other pirates wouldn't like it. They like to choose pirates who already had a reputation of being powerful and or terrifying. Luffy says he understands that they have plans to amend that, so please give them a little more time. Then he says something that is chilling if you know what happens a short time after this conversation. Referring to their plan, he says, "It will make you remember the Blackbeard Pirates in a way you won't forget." And can we take a moment to appreciate how nuts it is that Luffy was able to make it on top of the red line, past all the guards, and hide his aura in front of several of the strongest people in One Piece until he wanted them to know he was there. Something is definitely up with this guy. Back in the present on Mocktown, Blackbeard overhears some locals talking about how Luffy's bounty got increased to 100 million berries thanks to the events of Alabasta. After slamming Bellamy's vice captain through a table for being rude, Blackbeard says, "Shut up, I don't have time to deal with small fry. I'm looking for a head worth 100 million. I've got a reputation to make," referring to the info he got from Luffy and showing how fast he can adapt his plans. And so the Blackbeard Pirates head out to capture Luffy so they can turn him over to the Marines, because getting recognized as a warlord was a key component in the next few steps of Blackbeard's plan. Lucky for the Straw Hats though, fortune was shining on them more, because the Blackbeard Pirates do find them, but before they can make it close enough to the Going Merry to attack, the Straw Hats get blasted up to Skypiea via the knockup stream, and Blackbeard's ship gets destroyed. This starts the Straw Hat Skypiea adventure, but Blackbeard isn't even mad, he just laughs at how fate unfolded. Rereading this part made me ponder a quick question. If the Blackbeard Pirates and the Straw Hat Pirates did face off here, who do you think would have won this fight at this point in the story? Let me know in the comments who you think and why. After this, we don't really get to see Blackbeard again for a while as viewers until chapter 434. The Blackbeard Pirates have regrouped on Bonero Island, and Blackbeard is saying how Luffy's bounty is definitely going to jump again because of what the Straw Hats did at Enies Lobby. So now they have even more reason to go capture him. So they head off to look for Luffy, but suddenly Blackbeard hears a familiar voice. It's Fire Fist Ace, and he has finally tracked Blackbeard down in order to make him pay for his betrayal. Meanwhile, in this same chapter is where we chronologically have that Shanks Whitebeard encounter we mentioned earlier. Shanks is telling Whitebeard that out of all the scars he got from his countless battles, only one was aching at this moment, and it was the scar over his eye, and that he didn't get it on some kind of cool adventure or even in his legendary fight with Hawkeye, but it was in fact Blackbeard Teach that gave it to him, with Shanks going on to make it very clear that it wasn't because he was careless. Teach wounded him in a straight up fight, and given Shanks was already a monster at the time, Teach getting the better of him in any way is a testament to how dangerous his unknown powers are. I mean, think about it. This was before Teach even obtained the Yami Yami no Mi powers. If anyone would understand the significance of this, it would be Whitebeard, who has known Shanks since he was a child pirate prodigy on Roger's ship, and has watched him grow into one of the strongest people in the world. Shanks also explains how cunning Blackbeard was to hide in the shadow of the mighty Whitebeard for over 2 decades, pretending he wanted no fame or glory, and now that he has enough power, he is making his move. Shanks then practically begs Whitebeard to not go after Teach and to call back Ace. Whitebeard says he can't do that, and the two clash, splitting the heavens. Keep in mind, it is likely that Blackbeard is the pirate that Shanks was warning the Gorsey about, so he is actually like very worried about Blackbeard's threat level. Back on Bonaro, Ace and Blackbeard are having a little back and forth before Ace says, let's cut to the chase. You've been around a long time, you know what the vibes is. And this is where Blackbeard shows just how crazy he is, or confident, or both. He's like, yeah, but let me ask you something, Ace. Do you want to join me? Let's take over the world. I already got it all figured out. Obviously, Ace says no, but it's wild Blackbeard even asks. So yeah, Blackbeard then tells Ace he is on his way to kill Straw Hat Luffy and present him over to the world government as a gift, not knowing Luffy and Ace are brothers. This leads Ace to saying that's another reason he can't let him run loose, and then suddenly Van Augur tries to catch Ace slipping by sniping him while he is distracted, and then Burgess tries to jump in, but Ace easily gets the upper hand on both of them, leading Blackbeard to scold them, saying they aren't on Ace's level yet and to stay out of this. Ace then lands a pretty devastating attack on Blackbeard that is followed by them having a very lore-filled discussion. This is where we get a lot of the information we know about Blackbeard, why he felt like he had to kill their friend Thatch, that Blackbeard had memorized all the shapes of all the devil fruits, and how he felt it was just bad luck that his friend was the one that found the one devil fruit he had spent his entire life looking for, but that quote, this power chose me, kinda confirming Blackbeard's feelings on the situation I mentioned earlier, and is more foreshadowing that devil fruits have like this want or need to be eaten by certain users. Therefore, it does kind of make sense that a devil fruit about darkness and destruction is more likely to be pulled to a person like Blackbeard than one like that. Speaking of devil fruits, did you know that I ate the subscribe no me? With it, I can wield you into subscribing to my channel and liking this video for more of the deepest dives into all things One Piece, and it helps me achieve my dream of becoming the Pirate King of YouTube. Blackbeard says with this power I am the strongest in the world, and begins to activate his powers of darkness. Just knowing that their captain is engaging in a battle makes Blackbeard's crew flee the area terrified. Blackbeard then proceeds to suck in the entire town with a black hole and then release it completely destroyed with liberation. Ace uses his Firefly attack, which leaves Ace kind of surprised because it hurts Blackbeard more than it should, if he indeed has Logia powers like he said. But Blackbeard explains it's the one drawback for his incredible power. His body can suck in everything from punches to fire, but that means things such as pain are amplified in the process, which does suck. But in exchange for that, he can also pull in the actual body of devil fruit users. And then Ace notices Blackbeard can neutralize devil fruit powers. This was mind-blowing at the time, as One Piece viewers had never seen a power like this. Ace and Blackbeard would then battle with everything they have. Even Blackbeard's crew was impressed at how long Ace was lasting with his devil fruit powers being nerfed, since most users are overly dependent on them. Ace was just built different. But in the end, Blackbeard's power was just too much, and as he towered over Ace, He asks him to join him one last time. Ace says no, and they both launch an all-out attack. The sun versus the darkness. And when the curtains on the duel at Bonaro Island fell, the winner was Blackbeard. This event would be identified as the trigger for the world-shattering events that would follow. Blackbeard had done it. Screw Luffy and his measly 100 million berry bounty. He has captured a Whitebeard commander worth over 500 million. And more importantly, he was also the son of Gold D. Roger, the perfect pirate for the Marines to make an example out of. So he turns over Ace to the Marines and is officially recognized by the world government as a warlord. And the crazy thing is, he did all of this to get this title, but from the very beginning, he had already been planning on betraying them pretty much immediately. Blackbeard is playing 4D chess with all the major powers of the world, and while they are busy with the war that he puppeteered, in chapter 542, he would commence his betrayal in the form of invading the world government's most secure prison, Impel Down. Ironically, during the same time Luffy had just broken in an attempt to rescue Ace. Throughout this invasion, the Blackbeard pirates took out dozens of guards, and Blackbeard himself even curb stomps the then Underwarden's face into the ground from behind, leading Blackbeard and Luffy to cross paths for the second time, which is when Luffy would realize that the Blackbeard person he keeps hearing about is the same guy he met in Mocktown. Blackbeard begins to taunt Luffy about how he better hurry because his brother is about to lose his head, and then he reveals that briefly after their Mocktown encounter, he had decided that he was going to capture and kill Luffy, but after Ace found out, he attempted to stop him, which is what led to Ace taking Luffy's place. He tells Luffy that fate protected him, but is also insinuating that it's his fault that Ace might die, because if not for him, it would be Luffy who would be awaiting execution. Luffy then stands on business. He's like, then why don't you try me now? And hits Blackbeard with a devastating punch, but then Blackbeard Black Vortexes Luffy and dunks him into the ground on some LeBron James shit. Jinbei breaks up the fight because they really don't have time for this. If they want to save Ace, they do have to hurry, since they have figured out he had already been moved to Marineford. Jinbei explains to Luffy that Teach has always been a mystery to him, and now he somehow even has the power to best Ace. They should just go. Everything then gets even more chaotic because Warden Magellan is on his way. Before Luffy leaves, he tells Blackbeard that he is gonna save Ace, and Blackbeard says, I'm not gonna say you're wasting your time. Nothing is impossible in this world. Sky Island existed, didn't it? It's the same with the One Piece. It definitely exists.
The One Piece! The One Piece is real! Can we get much higher?
If you've noticed, Luffy usually knows exactly what to say because he doesn't overthink anything. He's usually great with comebacks or just doesn't take what the person's saying too serious. But it always seems that Blackbeard leaves him stumped or confused or just uneasy. I think it's because Luffy somewhat sees himself in Blackbeard, though be it a more extreme version or more like Luffy's anti-version like the anti-fairies from Fairly Oddparents. Blackbeard then yells, "Zahaha! You just wait and see. In a few short hours, we're going to put on a show that will shake the whole world." But then he gets himself bukkakied in Magellan's poison, which is pretty much a death sentence. This is why Blackbeard is so complicated. Sometimes he is an undefeatable genius who can hurt someone like Shanks or Ace, and then other times he's getting one-shotted and is just careless. But it doesn't really matter because he is favored by fate. For example, the Blackbeard pirates have just been wiped out and left for dead. But at this same exact time, the ex-head jailer of Impel Down, Shiryu, decided to officially defect, and then would give the Blackbeard pirates some antidote that saved them, then would join their crew. Shiryu is just like, I've been waiting to meet someone like you, Blackbeard. Blackbeard really does have that Luffy charisma that people are always talking about, where like people just always want to be around him or be on his side. Even those with strong wills are okay serving under him. After this, Blackbeard heads down to the deepest secret level of Impel Down, level 6, Eternal Hell, to fulfill his entire goal of the break-in. This level is where all the most dangerous and powerful prisoners are kept. The crimes they have committed are especially atrocious, and or their mere existence is a major threat to the world government. So their mere existence is being erased. And Blackbeard just walks up to them and is like, look, all of you kill each other and the last few that survive can join me and escape. I don't know how many bodies this added to Blackbeard's total victim count that that he's responsible for, by the time the impel down part of Blackbeard's plan is finished, he has successfully filled out his crew with the worst of the worst. The new members included Shiryu, San Juan Wolf, Basco Shaw, Avalo Pizarro, and Katarina Devon. Now that Blackbeard had all the pieces he needed for the next step of his plan, he and his crew would head over to Marineford and hide on the sidelines of the raging war, waiting on the perfect moment. I could do an entire 30-minute plus deep dive on the Paramount War, but in this video, I'm gonna just highlight the roles that Blackbeard played. In chapter 574, Ace dies protecting Luffy from Akainu, and then in 575, Luffy passes out from shock. Akainu then launches at Luffy to kill him next, but Luffy is saved by Marco the Phoenix. And then Whitebeard and Akainu start to go at it, which leads to Whitebeard being cut off from his fleet after using his Goro Goro no Mi powers. At this point, Whitebeard is just riddled with stab wounds, bullet holes, and half his face is now burnt off thanks to Akainu, and the perfect moment has arrived. Boom! The Blackbeard pirates appear. All the Marines, including the higher-ups like Sengoku, are flabbergasted because the most evil people on Earth are standing next to Blackbeard. Whitebeard wastes no time and launches an attack at them. In Blackbeard's own words, showing him no mercy. During their encounter, Blackbeard explains that he used to look up to Pops more than anything, but claims he got old, that he couldn't even save one of his sons from execution, even though he was nice enough to show him mercy on Monaro Island. The two begin to throw down, where Blackbeard begins to try to catch Whitebeard off guard with his Devil Fruit nullification, but a veteran like Whitebeard immediately adapts and slices into Blackbeard with his Moro Komogiri. To be honest, this is the first time I've seen Blackbeard truly scared. He is in so much pain, he grabs his face and tells Teach that his overconfidence and his carelessness are his weaknesses. Blackbeard starts begging Whitebeard to stop and tries playing on his fatherly instincts, but to no avail. This time, Whitebeard is out for blood. Blackbeard calls Whitebeard a monster and asks, "Why won't you die, old man?" Which does add to the Whitebeard legend. Then, Blackbeard makes the call. He yells, "Get him," and the entire Blackbeard crew appears in front of Whitebeard and begins a brutal attack. Blackbeard doesn't stop squeezing until he runs out of bullets. After the assault, somehow Whitebeard can still speak, shocking Blackbeard. Whitebeard gives his epic speech that ends with, "The One Piece does exist," pissing off the world government one more time. And after a total of 267 sword wounds and being struck by 152 bullets, the legendary Whitebeard dies standing tall, with not one coward's wound on his back. After this, the Whitebeard pirates mobilize to help Luffy escape, but for some reason, the Blackbeard pirates throw a dark tarp over Whitebeard's body. And then Blackbeard says, quote, "I'll show you the greatest show in the world." He enters briefly and then pops out from under the tarp. He attacks the nearby Marines with his Yami Yami no Mi powers, but then he demonstrates that he now also has the power of the Goro Goro no Mi as well by destroying half of Marineford. To this day, we don't know how he did it. This is the first time in known One Piece history that anyone has ever wielded two Devil Fruit powers simultaneously. This is when everyone realizes that Blackbeard had just made the entire world his victims. Whitebeard's crew, the Marines, the world government, and countless people along the way, all to gain the power he needed to start the second phase of his world takeover. So many died on both sides of the Paramount War, but there was only one winner, and that's Blackbeard. After the big show, Shanks shows up and is like, "Yo, this war is over." And everyone is like, "Yes, Daddy Shanks." Pretty soon after this, we have the 2-year time skip, during which the Straw Hats all go their separate ways to train. But Blackbeard, on the other hand, spends this time terrorizing his competition and enemies. One of the first things he does is head over to the New World and capture Jewelry Bonnie. His plan was to exchange her for a Navy battleship, but when he heard that Akainu was on the battleship, he fled. And honestly, knowing what we know now about Bonnie's Devil Fruit, it's possible Blackbeard already knew its secrets. Otherwise, why would Oda specifically write in this exact random interaction. The Payback War also happens. This was when the remnants of the Whitebeard pirates led by Marco would attempt to get revenge on Blackbeard, but they would utterly be wiped out. Not only did they fail at avenging Pops and Ace, but this win elevated Blackbeard's reputation so much that it and Blackbeard going after Whitebeard's former territories would make Blackbeard considered an Emperor level threat alongside Shanks, Big Mom, and Kaido. Sengoku would also step down as Fleet Admiral and Akeuno took over after he won the 3-day battle at Punk Hazard for control of the Marines against Kuzan. After his loss, he would then defect. This would later benefit Blackbeard when he would track down and recruit Kuzan after hearing he had nowhere to go. Their meeting did have some ups and downs, but it ultimately ended with Kuzan being the commander of Blackbeard's 10th Division. Do you understand how dangerous Kuzan's power alone is? Well, if not, keep watching and you will. And finally, during the time skip, Blackbeard was involved in the Rocky Port incident that took place on Hachinoso, aka Pirate Island. The exact details are still unknown, but even from what we do know, the events that happened here shifted the paradigm of the One Piece world. Blackbeard and Kobe worked together for some reason, and apparently Kobe protected the citizens, resulting in him getting promoted to captain and earning the epithet Kobe the Hero. They also defeated Ochoku, the previous ruler of Pirate Island, and Blackbeard would take over, making it his new base of operation. This is also the same incident in which Trafalgar Law would steal 100 pirate hearts and present them to the world government, leading to him being the newest warlord. After the time skip, Blackbeard has spent pretty much the entire second half of One Piece focused on collecting powerful devil fruits and giving them to his crew. During Dressrosa, Blackbeard allocated Burgess to attempt to win the Mera Mera no Mi, Ace's old fruit, at the Dressrosa tournament, but he would fail. In chapter 824, right as Luffy and the others are on their way to Whole Cake Island, we learn about how the Blackbeard pirates had attacked the Revolutionary Army's headquarters and leveled the place. This happened because after the Dressrosa arc, Sabo returned to the secret headquarters to speak to Dragon about the powerful weapons he stole. However, Burgess had stowed away on their ship and overheard them discussing the weapons. And after he discovered where the base was located, he reported it to Blackbeard. The location was then leaked to the Marines via an anonymous source, but by the time Cyprepole made it there, it had already been destroyed, and the Revolutionary Army had escaped. The Blackbeard pirates would briefly clash with Cyprepole, but then escape. During the Wano Kuni arc, Blackbeard was still focused on gathering powerful and useful devil fruits. One of the few we get to see explained on screen is when Gecko Moria shows up to Hachinoso looking for his crewman and friend Absalom, who had been missing. Moria knew the Blackbeard pirates had been hunting down people with particular powers, and that a lot of people would want Absalom's invisibility powers. From combat to information gathering, it's very useful. But Moria is relieved whenever he sees Absalom, who even apologizes for forgetting to contact him because he was just having too much fun on Pirate Island. Then out of nowhere, Moria and his zombies are getting sliced up, but when he turns around, no one is there, until suddenly Shiryu appears. Moria realizes what just happened but doesn't want to accept the truth. He asks, how can you turn invisible? That's Absalom's power. Shiryu confirms that Moria's bad premonition was correct. They had killed Absalom and stole his devil fruit. The one that Moria was talking to earlier was actually Katarina Devon, who had transformed her appearance with the mythical nine-tailed fox fruit. Blackbeard and Moria have a brief back and forth. This is when Blackbeard asks him to join his crew, but to Moria's credit, he stands his ground and says no, and is then imprisoned. I'm glad we got this encounter because it made it very clear that off screen, the Blackbeard pirates are actively killing devil fruit users and stealing their powers. Toward the end of Wano, the Marines decide to dissolve the Warlord program, and Blackbeard decides to take advantage of the situation to make some major moves. He starts in chapter 1059 by invading Amazon Lily in order to steal Boa's Mero Mero no Mi. Here things are just very complicated. Kobe and the Marines are already there trying to convince Boa to surrender, but she is resisting. And then it basically turns to an all-out war between Blackbeard, Boa, and the Marines. Blackbeard briefly faces off with the S-Hawk Seraphim, in which he is more surprised by his appearance than anything else. And with the Blackbeard's knowledge of One Piece history, he probably knows more about the Lunarians than even we do. Boa winds up turning both the Marines and Blackbeard's crew to stone, but Blackbeard is able to stall S-Hawk long enough to grab Boa by her neck, nullifying her power. Blackbeard tells her he has been hoping to get her power, but Boa is just straight badass here, and tells him this power is nothing without my beauty. beauty. And if he kills her, his men will never be unpetrified, even if someone new gets her powers. Blackbeard decides he should probably still kill her anyway, because if he lets her go, she will most likely turn the rest of them to stone. Even Kobe the hero can't save Boa, but luckily for her, Dark Knight Rayleigh shows up and is like, yo, Whitebeard's cabin boy, just to keep it real, I never really liked you. Rayleigh tells everybody to break it up and everybody listens. On his way out, Blackbeard manages to steal a battleship, capturing 800 Marines, and Kobe, being the kind of guy he is, volunteers to exchange himself as hostage since he is a much higher bargaining chip than 800 fallen Marines. And Blackbeard is aiming to pressure the world government into declaring Hachinoso an official country for some reason. After Wano, we figure out that Blackbeard has set a trap for either Kid Law or Luffy, depending on who chose what route. It would be Law's crew that would wind up clashing with Blackbeard. To keep it short, the two captains agree on a winner-take-all for each other's road poneglyphs. In chapter 1081, we learn that the Law pirates lost, and that their submarine was destroyed. But I will say this, Law held his own and even landed some brutal attacks on Blackbeard with his Devil Fruit Awakening. And I mean, let's keep it real, Law's crew is one of the most lopsided crews in the New World. Law does like 99% of the fighting, but still held it down. After his loss, Blackbeard threatens to rip out Law's heart, like he had done to the 100 pirates, but first, he was gonna take the Appi Appi no Mi. But right before that happens, Beppo the MVP would pop a molly that Chopper gave him, then transform into his awesome Sulong form and save Law, then escape. What Blackbeard versus Law showed us was just how powerful Blackbeard has become. He has mastered the strongest offensive Devil Fruit power now, and thanks to the Yami Yami no Mi, he also has the strongest defensive power as well. This, alongside his strategic genius and the pirate empire he has built, makes it easy to see why he is so dangerous. Which brings us to what's been going on back at his base of operations while Blackbeard was out pirating. Basically, Garp had heard that Kobe was being held hostage at the Blackbeard pirates base. And of course, he couldn't just let his protege and the future of the Marines rot away in a cell. So he heads straight to Pirate Island and drops a nuke punch on it. Blackbeard was smart enough to leave several of his commanders at their base, but too bad they were just fodder to a man like Garp with a fist. In chapter 1087, Garp defeats Sanwan Wolf effortlessly, and then he is just blitzing through the entire crew. With my favorite part of these fights being when Garp uses a couple of the pirates as a shield to block Vasco's shots, drunken Spitfire attack. So much happens in just a few chapters, mainly around Garp and his former protege Kuzan, but the key takeaway is through trickery and overwhelming power via Kuzan. In 1088, it's made clear that Garp is now a captive of the Blackbeard pirates. Now, before I explain why this is the worst case scenario for Luffy and the entire One Piece world, drop cherries in the comments, the word or the emoji, so I know you're a real one who made it to the very end of this video. I really appreciate it. So, in totality, Blackbeard is directly responsible for Luffy's brother dying and destroying his brother's adopted family for just a cherry on top. Blackbeard has kidnapped and or hurt several of Luffy's friends like Kobe, Boa, and Law. And really, we can even throw in Bonnie since her and the Straw Hats are close now. We know this is one of the main things Luffy does not tolerate. On top of all this devastation, Luffy's only blood relative that's still in his life is his grandpa, who is now a half-dead Blackbeard captive. Now, even if Garp isn't already dead, it still puts Blackbeard in the advantage for any negotiation or altercation they might have. By the way, have you ever wondered why Garp didn't have way more help taking on an Emperor level crew? It's because most of the Marines were sent to Egghead to deal with the Luffy Vegapunk situation. So just like with Ace, it's Luffy's fault another one of his relatives have been captured. At least that's how Blackbeard's gonna spin it. So Blackbeard could leverage Garp's life as a hostage to get Luffy's poneglyphs or Robin or whatever he wants. Maybe something that Vegapunk has, or maybe he wants Bonnie? That would bring their whole time skip encounter full circle. Plus, with what we now know about her Devil Fruit, there is countless uses he could have for it. And isn't it interesting that there is a Blackbeard ship approaching Egghead as we speak? If this does happen, I don't think Luffy and Blackbeard will fight here. It's too early for that in my opinion. Blackbeard might not even be on the ship, but Oda is definitely up to something because Blackbeard is too smart to approach another Emperor level crew without something in mind. Hell, the only person Luffy looks up to that Blackbeard isn't currently victimizing is Red Hair Shanks. But Blackbeard killing Shanks has been a popular theory for years. All the signs are there for Blackbeard being responsible for killing Luffy's idol and the whole reason for him becoming a pirate, strengthening him becoming the ultimate antagonist. And Blackbeard isn't just aiming for the pirate throne, but to rule the entire world. And he might just accomplish it. If you want to learn how, subscribe to see part 2 of this video or watch more of my Victim series.